Okay, so
Yeah,
this is exciting.
absolutely.
I'm just gonna put this in the right spot and
Okay.
got 2, so we got 4 there, so I'm muting, oops, I always do 3x down. I'm muting 2, 'cause 2's down there. You'll be recording your feet, and you don't need to record your feet.
That's so interesting.
It is interesting.
Yeah, I wonder if anyone ever uses that.
If there's 2 other people that they're interviewing, which I did for
okay.
and maybe they can track whether they're nervous or not.
Oh my
So,
gosh. Yeah, that feels a little too big
Toe
brother
tapping.
for me.
Oh, they're tapping their toes. I noted in the interview that they were tapping their toes. They must not have liked the question. Thank you, Carmen, for coming on. The current director of Project Neighbors, and I just want to basically ask you some questions. One of those questions is, what brought you into being the director of Project Neighbors? What, inspired you to be a part of the solution of affordable housing?
Yeah, well, I had thought of myself as a very unlikely candidate when I applied, being, at the time I was 25. So I know.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
But I knew a couple of board members, and they really encouraged me to apply. So I did, because it would be a wonderful opportunity. I really didn't think I would get it, but I guess, the board resonated with my passion for the mission, and I presented like a 5-year strategic plan in my interview and all that good stuff. So here we are. I mean, it's kind of incredible. Personally, I'm drawn to Project Neighbors because I grew up in a family that was severely house cost burdened. So my dad was a pastor making very little income. My mom stayed at home with us kids. So oftentimes, the house costs would eat up their entire budget, be very little left for food, transportation, all of the other kinds of necessities. They also bought in 2007, right before the crash, and they bought a house they couldn't afford. So, we had a roof over our head, which I'm grateful for, but there was always that nagging feeling of like, we might not be able to make the mortgage payment next month, and then what happens? And, why don't I have all the same things that other kids at school have? Things like that. That it wasn't blatant that we were struggling until I looked back on it, that we really were struggling. And I just remember laying in bed at night and being really stressed about that on behalf of my parents. So, even though I haven't experienced explicit homelessness or anything like that, I have experienced, the stress of, not feeling like you can rely on the housing you have because of how expensive it is. And so what I love about Project Neighbors is it kind of captures that whole spectrum of experiences, from people who have been homeless to people who have been couch surfing to people who can't afford market rate rent, or who did maybe buy a house they couldn't afford and didn't work out. They couldn't afford it any longer. So we capture a wider range of folks in different backgrounds, which I think is wonderful. Being able to provide that stability, especially for the kids that live in our housing, that means a lot to me. It's pretty healing to be able to do that work. And then before this role, I had my own digital media business. So I was actually doing like video content and podcasts and such for nonprofits around the country. So I felt like, that skill set could transfer to help me spread awareness about Project Neighbors and what we do. Because when I came on, big wording on their website was that Project Neighbors is the best kept secret in town. And I can understand the sentiment that, our housing is of quality that you can't tell it apart from the market rate housing next door. But in another sense, a lot of people still don't know about Project Neighbors, and that's been my goal, implementing all kinds of different marketing strategies and outreach campaigns, just to help get the word out.
And maybe in that knowledge of that the community would gain about it, then maybe more people would support it, and maybe catalyze more growth and ability to provide affordable housing. Is that the sort of idea behind building more awareness of it?
Absolutely. Because if you can afford your housing, you might not really think about folks who can't. until it happens to you. And what I like to tell people is most of us are one or two bad events away from not being able to afford our housing anymore, from being in poverty, one bad ER trip, a car crash. It really doesn't take much, and it's not necessarily something we can prevent either. So, I'd like people to be aware of and be supportive of affordable housing and the need for it in our community before they have to face that need themselves.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And so you talked about your 5-year plan or strategy to basically solve affordable housing, or to help, probably not that,
Probably not.
but to help with the affordable housing problem within the scope and abilities of Project Neighbors.
Right. So, what I knew of Project Neighbors in the interview phase, I took that, and then the final interview phase was to present a 5-year strategic plan. So, my proposal was to focus in on the Affordable Housing Initiative and the Freedom Recovery Fund, which we also offer, and try to hone in on those, spread the word. And there were a lot of details I included there that I have since learned are a bit different and nuanced now being in this role. So we're in the process of working with an actual strategic planning coach to help us, build a more robust plan and have, a way forward so we can be really intentional, because, the current climate kind of calls for that kind of intentionality these days.
Yeah. So can you give an example of one of the things that you'd be doing over the course of 5 years with Project Neighbors? Maybe some of those things have changed, like you said,
Right.
with the strategic planner that you're talking to, but is there anything sort of set in stone as far as what your goals are?
Yeah, well, so currently we're building our largest project ever, which is a 23-unit studio apartment building at 850 Axe Ave, just north of Duffy's. That will house 23 individual residents. We are used to doing single-family homes and duplexes, so this is a big leap forward for us. Yeah. And I think we're learning a lot along the way about what it means to take on a large-scale project like that versus doing one home at a time. So earlier this year, I was lucky enough to be able to rezone some 4 parcels of land from Valparaiso University, and we ended up purchasing those for a wonderful price, very affordable, and that will be the site of our next new construction. We'll be building 4 duplexes on those. So we'll be kind of going back to our roots in a way, but it's going to be multiplied by 4. So there's still that increased impact as well.
Oh, that's great.
Thanks.
Yeah, the biggest project, and then a bunch of other multifamily home dwellings. So that's really good.
Thanks.
So let's see. I want to get into what Paul had said and his strategy, and I want to see what you think about it. And I'm just going to sort of read from my notes here. Yeah. So he had proposed this solution that's sort of beyond the scope of Project Neighbors, but maybe still sort of feel a role of advocacy for this proposal, and I'll go ahead and read the rest of it. So he said that the UDO can loosen regulations enough to allow more affordable, space-efficient lot sizes and more dense housing, multifamily, apartments, within current restrictive zones, and then the RDC can provide the incentives for residential home builders to buy their cheap land, allowing them to make a profit and provide affordable housing to more residents. It sounds to me like a good idea. Is that something that Project Neighbors is interested in advocating for with, say, whoever the relevant government bodies that they need to in order to get that moving forward? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, since I started in February, I've had multiple conversations with city planning, Bob Thompson and Jessica Gage, who I would love for you to talk to.
I'm going to write those down. Bob
Thompson and Jessica Gage. And, zoning is often... it often comes up in conversations about how to create more affordable housing, as more density, change zoning, and just in talking and learning more about city planning, it's more complex than that, right? In addition to that, you also have to think about the culture and the mindset of the community that you'd like denser housing in. And I've got to say, I've learned a lot in the past 9 months that Valparaiso would definitely need a culture and mindset shift. Have you heard of the word NIMBY? Mm-hmm. Okay, not in my backyard, right? Mm-hmm. Folks who say affordable housing is great, just don't do it in my backyard, or don't do it in Valpo, somewhere else. The problem with that is, when you go to build denser housing and try to get that past like city planning and city council, or even just get a permit, there can be major pushback from the community because folks don't want denser housing, because unfortunately it's tied to some stereotypes and stigmas that honestly the underlyings of those are racist. There are certain types of people that folks don't want in their community. They think it brings crime to have more people, all of these negative things, when really that's just not the case. That's where storytelling is so important here. Mm-hmm. We have to tell stories about who these people are who are taking advantage of affordable housing in Valpo, who need affordable housing. They are nurses, they are teachers, they are seniors, veterans, pastors, firefighters, yes, police officers, grocery store clerks. I mean, are we really saying we don't want these people to live in our community, or that we do, but we need them to be house poor, and not live a full life? I just think that is so unfair. So there's a mindset shift that needs to take place, I think, before any kind of policy work can really be effective in our community.
And I think one way to really illustrate that is that only the top quartile of earners can afford the average house cost in Valparaiso.
Yeah.
That's not teachers.
No.
That's absolutely not teachers. And
to be fair, that's not even executive directors. I make a good salary, but I can't afford the average home in Valpo. So I rent cheaply up in Chesterton. So it's tough. How many folks really do have to sacrifice living in the community they work in because the market just prices them out. Mm-hmm. But the market still needs their labor, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. It's the market allows it.
Right.
So it is.
Right.
But that's when the government should probably step in and, incentivize something different, in this case. Those are all the questions, but...
Did you want to talk about our strategy for building affordable housing?
Let's get into that.
Okay, great. Because I think Project Neighbors has discovered sort of a secret sauce, but it has to exist under the umbrella of a nonprofit.
Okay.
So, I would say Project Neighbors is really great about identifying and buying cheap land. That's the important first step.
Yeah.
If we can't acquire cheap land, the rest of it's going to be unaffordable. Mm-hmm. Then we design really simply. We don't over-design. We don't build 2,500 square foot homes, but we do still design for comfort, just not for luxury necessarily. And that also helps keep things affordable. And then we can find creative ways like an accent wall or something to make it feel more like home, or bring other things in to make it feel more like home too. And then our volunteers are a huge part of the equation. We have a really dedicated group of volunteers who have helped us on all of our builds, and they save us tens of thousands of dollars in contractor labor. So that also helps keep things affordable. Yeah. And then we get really creative about rezoning. We, in the past, have found land that is zoned for commercial or for something other than residential, and we go through the rezoning process to zone it residential and build on it. So there are all kinds of different ways to get at that, but ultimately, we also couldn't do this without our donors. Our donors are the reason that we can close that gap and afford these properties that we built. And then henceforth, rent them out at half market rate.
Right.
So, yeah, there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle that isn't necessarily realistic or doable for the average person who's not in the nonprofit world, right?
Right.
So,
right.
yeah, maybe Project Neighbors can do it, but we have to do it slowly, one by one project at a time, and that model might not necessarily extend to everyone either.
Right. So, yeah, it needs to obviously be affordable, and it's good that there is a strategy that Project Neighbors does have, but I think Project Neighbors, and I think you'd probably agree that it's just not the end-all be-all of what the solution is going forward for the affordable housing sort of crisis. It has to be pairing between government, builders, and the people who actually live there in order to actually make progress.
Right.
So it'll take a lot of incentives, it looks like, and talking to the right people, and but ultimately, you can't talk to everyone.
Right.
But that's where I guess your advocacy and your social media skills come in, where you can tell those stories, and those stories can reach a lot of people. Those can reach a lot of hearts. Like, just going over who is really affected by this housing, all the people who are house poor, as you say, people who in the 1950s could have definitely afforded a home,
right? Maybe
even up to the 1970s, as Paul says, or as Papillo was saying the other day. But teachers, nurses, these people who are pillars of our community, they should be able to afford a house.
Yeah. Well, and I even think about like our neighbors in the disability community. They also should be able to afford independent, autonomous living if they're capable of that. I mean, we are pricing so many people and their lifestyles and their backgrounds out of this market. And some of it feels intentional, some of it feels like perpetuating the cycle of poverty in ways. I mean, we have residents who are on Social Security or disability. Their income is capped every month. So if we were to raise rents, or if they had to go find like a market rate studio, they would have nothing left for food, for healthcare costs, for clothing, transportation. So it's just, the stakes are high.
Lives. The stakes are actual lives.
Yeah.
And policy pushes out those lives into precarious situations, which are, stories that get swept under the rug. We built this great new apartment, and it's very beautiful, and it's $2,000 a month or something,
right?
Or it's $500,000, or it's $1 million to buy. That's that sort of thing. Obviously, is not affordable housing, but it makes things less affordable. The more unaffordable things you have, you're diluting the market or saturating it and saying, that's what the market can afford.
Yeah, people who are living in like the median priced houses in Valpo, maybe they're growing older and want to downsize. Well, if they try to downsize, they're spending just as much, if not more at this point, to downsize than to just stay in their home. So then those homes don't open back up to the general market. So people looking for that price range can't afford more. So they're going to take up some of the affordable housing options. So it's just kind of like trickling down and saturating all of our housing, so that the people who really truly need that affordable housing don't always have options. I know Project Neighbors always has a wait list, and so does like Co-Action. They always have a wait list, and that's just because there's always going to be more need than we have available units. We rarely have turnover. It does happen, but we have residents who have lived with us for 10, 15 years. So it's wonderful to be able to provide that kind of stability, but there are situations where, like, if there were more affordable homes to buy, some of our residents might be able to make that leap and start to be able to build equity for themselves and generational wealth for their family. But there just isn't that stock here in Valparaiso.
And there should be that opportunity.
Yeah.
For people who, I mean, not to say that people who are not working or are not able to work shouldn't have it, but definitely, you know, the middle class has been basically shut out of housing. People who are working. And that is obviously not right.
No. Right.
And so, yeah. So it's obviously a very good cause. We got to keep moving forward with it and telling those stories that are happening every day. And it's, you know, I think it is a advocacy fight that has to be fought every day, and to spread awareness of it in order to actually make any headway in it. Because, you know, like you said, there's a lot of stigmas about basically any type of housing that isn't $400,000. Like what?
Right. Absolutely.
What is that? Right.
And I mean, we can't be honest with ourselves unless we're bringing race into the conversation, especially in Valparaiso. Did Paul talk to you about the beginnings of Project Neighbors?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So he talked to you about Walton Lowy's beginning the Valparaiso Builders Association, building the Cotton House, Barbara Cotton and her children coming over from Chicago and being the first Black family to move here. Right. Did he tell you about how they needed security outside their house?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's shocking, right?
It is shocking.
But to be fair, I mean, yes, we've improved from that, but things haven't gotten a whole lot better because a lot of the community will still go to city council to oppose denser housing or affordable housing because they are afraid of a certain type of person coming to live in Valpo. And yeah, I mean, we're two white people talking about a race issue, but it's part of the equation here that needs to be considered and talked about, and not just brushed under the rug.
They fear the poor, but they also don't understand that the people who are being disenfranchised by their housing policies are not poor people. They're working class people who should be a part of your town. And I mean, there are, according to the people who I've talked to, certain goals that the city has of making us like a tourist attraction and making us attractive in that way, and affluent is the word that they use. But why?
Well, and I guess
just money? Is that everything?
And I wish we could kind of open our view a little wider, because yes, we can have affluent housing. We just need the diversity of options. We need affordable, we need middle class, we need options for more affluent people. That's what a healthy economy is a diverse mixture of all of those folks in a community. But what we're seeing, unfortunately, is that there's more of a focus on like the upper class and bringing them to Valpo instead of trying to foster more of like a diverse mixture of folks. But I won't say, I mean, that's not everyone in Valpo. And honestly, it's been really encouraging these past 9 months in this job to see how many folks do support that diversity and support affordable housing. Just this week when we learned that it was a final decision that SNAP benefits were going to be paused, we posted a fundraiser on Tuesday, I think, for $5,000 so that we could give each of our households a $100 Walmart gift card, right? It's raised more than $7,000 at this point. I mean, people just outpoured support because I think, you know, a majority of folks in this town understand that we are all human beings. We all have needs that need to be met and deserve to have those needs met. So that was really encouraging to see this week.
Definitely, and I've definitely seen a lot of people making strides to help with the SNAP benefits that are being cut. Even within my neighborhood group, I was sharing somebody else's post, and I was like, "Can we do something like this?" And like, so everybody is paying attention to the needs of people on SNAP. It seems, at least in this town, and. If that's any barometer of what's going around in the country, then people care.
Yeah,
a lot of people care.
I think it's, it's funny. I don't know if that's the right word, that it's easier for people to care about concrete things like SNAP benefits. Like, let's get canned food to the food pantry because people need to eat. But we don't look at like the underlying issue of it all, of if people could afford their housing, for example, or their healthcare, for example, they could afford food. That the whole equation's kind of messed up right now.
And it's really complicated. And I think we can't really understand it fully without, there's private equity in like the acquisition of properties through like BlackRock and through other companies where they are basically speculative investors, where they are, flipping all these properties, and they're trying to make the maximum profit, and the market's allowing them to do that. And we have to, I guess, as Paul was saying, we have to acknowledge that fundamental problem, that the market has failed in some extent in leading our society to prosperity. Like, okay, is prosperity only something for the top quintile?
Right.
It shouldn't be. Not in the context of a society. No.
Yeah.
So there needs to be there needs to be a lot done. Like I said before, a partnership in understanding in government of the problem, and understanding those stories of the people who live here, and how they've been systematically left behind by the market,
right,
that has shut them out of, building that generational wealth through housing.
Yeah.
And that's the real problem. They have to acknowledge the problem and address it through policy.
And people, and this is honestly at no fault to anyone. We care about what's in front of us, right? Because there's just so much to care about these days.
Definitely.
And so what's happening more and more, though, is that, unaffordable housing is becoming in front of us for more people, right? So I think this is not just like a hot button topic for 6 months. This is going to be a growing issue, and it's going to get worse until it gets better. But people are going to start experiencing unaffordable housing themselves, or their kids are going to experience it, or their parents when their parents are getting older and they can't find affordable assisted living somewhere. When people experience these issues personally, I think it opens up their minds to, oh wow, actually yes, this does matter, and I guess I didn't see it that way. So I do think there's going to be growing support as things get more difficult for people.
Definitely. Definitely. Once they're in that situation themselves, then they can't help but understand the problem a bit better. And, maybe they'll be able to tell their story, but there's a factor of, once you are in such a situation, you're sort of taken out of the equation by the means of, well, I have no longer time to share my story about what has happened to me. I don't have time to go to a council meeting to tell my story about how this has systemically happened to me, that I've done everything right and this has still happened. And that's really, I think, where advocates like Project Neighbors and other, We Build Indiana. Is that
We Make
Indiana?
Yeah.
That's where those groups come in. Advocacy is really important for you guys to step in there and to get those stories and get them out there.
Yeah, when I was presenting to City Council to rezone that land from VU, I brought a couple of our residents with, and they told their stories to the mayor and City Council, and I felt like that was so powerful for people to see face to face. Like, we are all just human beings here, and some of us have been dealt different hands, and we need to be there for one another. But I think you hit on a great point that, folks who are struggling financially, living paycheck to paycheck, we're in survival mode. We can't think about policy right now. We don't have 3 hours to go to a city council meeting. We're working 3 jobs, So I think, the onus can't be put on the folks being oppressed by the system to fight back. All of us as a community need to see the collective value of advocating for one another. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A phrase comes to mind that we're not free until we're all free.
Yeah. Love that.
We got to think about that as a town. That's prosperity. Mm-hmm. If we're all free to, live the lives that we want to live and live out our dreams, then that's prosperity.
Yeah, but I mean, we're so intentionally divided these days through algorithms of all things now. Mm-hmm. So I think we're going to have to overcome that, because right now we're looking at the other and the other, where there's no we anymore. And I think we need to build that back up. Yeah. Yeah.
How does that begin?
Right. Well, and I think it begins when we all realize we're all struggling. Yeah. You're struggling just as much as I am. I may not agree with your politics, but man, we both deserve to afford our housing. Right. Let's do something about it.
Yeah, I think it's, as you've exemplified there, it's your story, it's our story as people. And if we lose track of just, what we do in this town and sharing that with others, we can't really humanize somebody with a different political view if we just look at them for their political views.
Yeah. The labels that we put on other people.
Right.
Those are damning.
But if we say, I couldn't afford the eggs this week either. Right. I couldn't afford the rent. I had to talk to my landlord this week too.
Yeah, but not place that on a politician.
And
thanks Biden or thanks Trump for that. We need to stop. We need to just look at a human level. What are we both experiencing and struggling with, and what can we do about it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, because as was proven this week with the SNAP benefits fundraiser, we can come together and support each other. Yeah.
I think that's a good place to end the interview. Thank you so much, Carmen, for coming in. Let's continue with that goal. Yeah. Of sharing our stories and advocating for people and finding those stories and amplifying them so that we can live in a city that is prosperous, not just for the top quintile, but for all. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right.